Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne and this is In Search of Wonder. And today I am finally doing another Books Are Like Coffee episode. And today the topic is, of course, Christmas. So I believe I have done 2 so far of these videos of Books Are Like Coffee, and I have been intending to do another one for a while, but I've just had other more time-sensitive stuff that just popped up. So finally getting to another one, but this is a good one. It's Christmas. Now, if you haven't watched one of my Books Are Like Coffee episodes before, basically I compare books to coffee. Yeah, but I bet that was already pretty obvious. So let's see if I can explain it a little better. So, there's all different levels of coffee. There's the kind that the starter coffee that's often like powdered, sweetened, flavored. Often people's first foray into drinking coffee, at least it was for me. Sugary, sweet, creamy, not really a whole lot of actual coffee. All the way up to, the very acquired taste of like a double shot, straight up espresso. So in between, all sorts of variations of coffee beverages with more or less accessibility, shall we say. So books are like that. Some books are just short, sweet, fun reads without a lot of depth, very accessible, easy, good when you just want something quick and fun and sweet. And some books are heavy, and some books are an acquired taste, and some books take a little more effort, a little more mental energy to read. So I have Christmas books on all levels for you. The good thing is that the vast majority of Christmas books are very short. So I only have a couple lengthy ones on here. Most of them are pretty short, so even the more heavy-hitting books aren't very long, so you can still enjoy it in a smaller dose. And the other thing is, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of these Christmas books on hand. I actually have a minimal Christmas book collection, so I won't be able to show you, but I'll put pictures of the covers up for you, except for the handful that I do happen to have. So let's get started. First of all, we have that's right, instant coffee. Not just, the instant powdered coffee, but I'm talking about like that kind that used to come in those International Delight tins. Maybe they still do, I don't really even know. Got a lot of sugar, got flavoring, got powdered cream in there, and a little bit of coffee. So it's more like a dessert in a cup than anything else, or maybe like the coffee version of hot chocolate. Oh, see my cute little mug. Hello, Jesus. We've been waiting for you. Isn't that cute? And I have in here just French press coffee with a little half and half in it. That is and it's decaf because it's late. And I'm just drinking some decaf right now, which I like to do at night. But back to the powdered coffee drinks, which is more like hot chocolate than anything else. And these are just fun, easy reads that aren't going to require anything from you. And there are a bazillion, literally a bazillion of these. Count them. I promise you, guarantee a bazillion. So I could go on and on and on and on forever, and we would be here all the way up until next Christmas listing these books. So I'm just going to highlight a few that I have read that I enjoyed that actually stick out to me a little bit. So being a little more memorable than the run-of-the-mill Christmas stories of the ones that I have read thus far in my life. So one of these, there were 2 by Melissa Tagg. And she wrote, was it Autumn by the Sea, that a lot of people have been talking about recently. Including myself, I read that earlier this autumn. And she also wrote a great Christmas series of novellas. Well, I know there are at least 2. I don't know if there were any other in that series, but the 2 that I read were One Enchanted Christmas and One Enchanted Eve. And even though they were, shorter stories. I think they would be considered novellas. They did have some depth to them, but it's just very well written. Set at Christmas time, of course, and romances. Clean, sweet, fun reads. I believe, I don't know the exact setting, but it was a small town in up north, the north Midwest somewhere, like maybe Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that. Anyway, a very snowy, cold place in like at least one of them was set, I think both of them were, but at least one of them was like set in like a lodge kind of house. Anyway, both very good. Then another one that I read last year was Joy to the World, which is actually a Regency Christmas novella collection. So I think there are 3 in there. And I know, I can't remember which were the 3 authors that were in there. But the second one in the book was written by Amanda Barrett, which I had never read anything by her. And it was so good for a novella and a short little romance novella to boot. It packed a real punch. And since then, like this past school year, I've been wanting to read more by her, but I haven't yet. I really want to read her latest book that was recently released, I believe. It was set in World War I or World War II, maybe. Anyway, the Christmas novella that she wrote was very good, but the whole trilogy was one of my favorites that I had read in recent history, and I enjoyed it very much. And then another one that I thought was kind of a fun twist, Plenty of Cheese. So, but that happens in Christmas books, right? That's what we read them for, right? By Regina Scott. So not Christian, but clean. And that is My True Love Gave to Me. And so it's kind of playing off the old song, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me. And it's a romance in Regency times. And there's also like a little bit of, I think, a mystery going on there. But I just thought it was fun how she played around with that song and the little story to go with that. So those are my instant coffee reads. Next up, we have for dessert lattes. So these ones have a little more body to them, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little more depth. But still just very enjoyable, easy reads that you don't have to think too much about. It's just something to enjoy. And we all need a lot of that at the holidays, right? And the first one on this list is, I do have a copy of An Ivy Hill Christmas by Julie Klassen. And this is one of the first Christmas novellas that I truly loved as a book. Like, not just, oh, that's a great Christmas story, but I really just loved the characters in it and the story and how it was developed. It is one of my favorite tropes, but it's a trope that can be, it's also not my favorite trope because it can be very, very poorly done, but I guess that's true of all of them. But when it's well done, I really like it. And that is the roguish kind of hero. Like, he's a bad guy. Everybody, he comes across as a bad guy, but really he's not a bad guy. And or he's reformed through the course of this story. And so that's what we have here. Richard Brockwell is his name. He hasn't been home for Christmas in years, but he goes home. He's kind of forced to go home for the house party at Christmas time, and he's just begrudgingly doesn't want to be there. He's kind of like the prodigal son in a way. But then things happen, things change, and I really loved his character development in this story. So good. And honestly, this book is my favorite in the whole series, which, if you know Julie Klassen, she has a whole series set in Ivy Hill. It's like a village series. So it follows the lives and romances and etc. of several key people in the village. And very good series, but this was my favorite. Who knew? Of all of them. So that's one. Then another one would be Christmas at Carnton by Tamara Alexander, who is one of my favorite Christian fiction authors. And she also has a new book out that I really want to read and I've heard great things about. But this one is from her series about Carnton, which is a plantation in the South. As she has a few series set in plantations, actual plantations in the South, and she's kind of like going off of their history. And Carnton is no different. And this particular one, what stood out to me was that the main character, the heroine in the story, she was reading A Christmas Carol out loud to soldiers who were recovering from the war, the Civil War. Did I mention it was set during the Civil War? Who were recovering there at the plantation. And so it has a little bit of heaviness because, you know, it's set in wartime. In the Civil War, I find it's not my favorite era to read about, to be honest, but it was good because it's so heavy and it's hard to read about the war itself and the slavery and all of those aspects of it. But that one I really enjoyed. It had enough seriousness to it to give it some depth and to handle the serious matter of what, you know, the wartime, etc. But enough lightness with it being Christmas and everything. So I enjoyed that one. And then we have The Christmas Bride by Melanie Dobson, who is another author that I enjoy. And this one is about, if I remember correctly, I have to look up some of these because now I think I'm talking about these and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's what it's about. It's been a year or two, a couple years, 3 years, some of them or so since I read it. And my memory is not the greatest, but I'm pretty sure this is what it's about. About a Moravian family that comes to the States. And so the Moravians was like a Christian sect in the 1700s, I want to say. And maybe even before then, starting in Europe, I want to say in Western Europe, like Germany area, somewhere around in there. And what sticks out to me from the book is that they decided things, they lived as a community and they decided a lot of things by casting lots because they saw that happening in scripture. And so it seemed like the biblical way to make decisions, including like who people married. Not always, I don't think, but sometimes. So in this case, that's what happened. This couple was put together by the casting of the lots. And then they moved to America, to colonial America. So it was a very primitive setting. And they established a community and a mission here on this side of the globe. So it was very interesting. I learned a lot I never had read anything about the Moravians before. I found it very fascinating, but they're part of the culture, the cultural history of the United States. So kind of woven into the fabric there. And it was a very interesting, they were very mission-minded people and very much intent on ministering to community in which they found themselves. So those are my dessert latte suggestions. So on to cappuccinos. So a little less sugar, but still plenty of froth. I have a few really good suggestions here. The first one is A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews, who is one of my favorite authors of Regency or Victorian more often, but she does write some Regency Victorian romances set in England. And she's just a very good writer, and she's very well researched. She's a historian, and I usually love the characters and the character development. I don't love all of her books, but I'm willing to read all of her books because they're usually very good. And A Holiday by Gaslight is one that she wrote that I really enjoyed. I honestly don't remember a great deal about it, but I remember that I really liked it. And then A Wreath of Snow by Liz Curtis Higgs, which she writes a mix of Christian fiction and like Bible studies or devotionals. She is a wonderful speaker. If you ever have a chance to hear her speak in person, I really enjoyed. I've listened to her once or twice. Excellent speaker. I have enjoyed all of her books I read. She's got a great sense of humor, but she also digs really deep into scripture, and so she writes it in a very approachable style, but there's a lot of research underneath it, so you learn a lot in the process. But this, A Wreath of Snow, was just a short Christmas little story, but it was very much written in this style of like it's set in Victorian times, and it was very much written in the style of a Victorian story with the themes and the I remember they're riding on a train, and the train gets stuck by snow, and then there's a lot of other stuff that happens in the story, but it's a bit of an emotional story, and anyway, just one that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the setting of it and the story itself, very Christmassy. And then a very short one, in fact, it's called A Tiny Christmas Tale. The full title is Bespoke, A Tiny Christmas Tale by Amanda Dykes. And she is also one of my favorite authors. If you've never read her prose is just beautiful, simply beautiful. And she could be writing about just about anything, and it would just flow from the page beautifully. And so that was a lovely little Christmas story that she wrote. She has a couple of very short Christmas stories, but just so beautifully written. You can read it in one sitting and sit by your tree and read it, light a candle, drink a cappuccino or coffee or hot chocolate or whatever, eat a Christmas cookie. Christmas perfection right there. And then I forget the author. Anyways, I'll put it up on the screen. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which I've heard a couple of other people talking about this on YouTube. It's a classic Christmas novel. It is hilarious. And if you ever get a chance to see a live production of it, even a local community one, which is what we saw a few years back, go see it. So funny, hilarious. There's these kids who are, they haven't grown up in church. They're not used to, the way, proper church things happen, like the Christmas pageant, for example, but they are enthusiastic and they want to be part of it, and things happen. So funny things happen. So that one is a good one. I think that I was just watching Kate Howe's Christmas TBR, and she put that on there as a reread. I don't think I have time to reread it, but it's definitely worth reading and or rereading. So those are my cappuccino selections. Moving on to so Americano, like we're starting to lose here, even the cream, like we're just getting to the pretty heavy hitting stuff here. So for the Americano, these are just like classic, solid books. You just can't go wrong. And I mean, the most obvious is, of course, in my cheesy little copy here. I need to get me a really nice copy of that, right? Anyway, this is A Christmas Carol, of course, by Charles Dickens. Everybody knows about that one. What's more to say, right? Another one is also not very long. It's more of like essay length, really. It is called A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. And it's just a really lovely description of exactly that, A Child's Christmas in Wales. I don't know what the time frame is, like maybe early 20th century, late 19th century. Offhand, I don't know, even though I actually skimmed through it recently. Anyways, but it totally evokes all of the nostalgic, sentimental images of Christmas. It's a little bit funny, definitely heartwarming, and just another lovely one to read, just sitting by the fireside or by your Christmas tree and soaking in all of the beauty of the season. That's really what it's all about. And then one of my favorite short stories by Leo Tolstoy, which is Where Love Is, God Is, and it goes by several other different names, but it's the story of an older gentleman who really wants to see God, and then several people come to visit him, and he's he has this vision that God or Jesus is going to come and visit him, and like 3 people come into his house on the day it was supposed to happen, but none of them are Jesus. It's like, I thought you said you were going to come and visit me. And yeah, you can read the rest of the story to find out. I really like Leo Tolstoy's short stories. I mean, I like his really, really long stories too, but actually, to be fair, I've only read one of them. So yeah, but I like his short stories. Then we have, of course, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. I mean, that one is a great Christmas classic and packs such a punch. I like listening to that one. I've listened to that one a couple of times. I don't know if I've ever actually read it. Interesting. Anyways, but that is a good classic one to read. And another one which I do have a copy of, and I have a nice copy, that is The Nutcracker. And, it's tradition to go see the ballet. I've seen it a few times. But how often do people actually read the story? It's a fun story to read too. So put that on the list as well as a good classic read for Christmas time. All right, we are getting close to the end here. Next we have so for black coffee. Anybody here drink their coffee straight? I used to when I was I still do intermittent fasting, but now I do more like dirty fasting. So I put cream in my coffee in the morning, but there was a period of time for a couple of years where I drank the coffee straight. And I found that actually sometimes I really like that because you can actually taste the coffee and it tastes really good. So this is a little getting into a little more like hardcore. You are serious about your coffee when you drink it black. So I have a few suggestions. Another short story by Leo Tolstoy. Now, the one I mentioned before was not specifically necessarily a Christmas story per se. I think it mentions like snow and stuff, but I don't think it's necessarily set at Christmas. It could be wrong, but this one is definitely set at Christmas, and it's called A Russian Christmas Party. And I read that last year or the year before. I never read it before. Short story, but it's not as obvious. Like Where Love Is, God Is, everything is very obvious in that story, and you don't really have to, the impact is, you can't miss it. It's right there. But this is a little more subtle, and so a little more thinking involved in this one, but still a short story. So, and it's really cool because it really, more so than the other Tolstoy I mentioned, really evokes the feeling of a Russian Christmas at that time. Like you really get immersed in this setting, in this space of being in Russia, and they go on a troika ride. That word is hard to say. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun. Then there is A Burglar's Christmas by Willa Cather. which I also read, I think last year or the year before. And that one made me cry. It was very sad. I feel like there's some similarity there, maybe to The Gift of the Magi in some ways. I don't know why I feel like that. Not really sure if that makes sense. But I felt, I don't know, it just reminded me both the one of the other. But anyways, this one is, it has some more heavy emotion to it, maybe, but it's still very good. And then if you want, now this one is going in a different direction. This is more like a Bible study-ish sort of book. And that is The Women of Christmas by Liz Curtis Higgs. And I haven't actually read this one, but this past Easter, I read The Women of Easter by the same author. And I imagine this Christmas one is very similar. And I really enjoyed the one about women at Easter. And like I said already about Liz Curtis Higgs, her writing style is very approachable because it's very humorous, it's very engaging, but there is a great depth of research underneath all of that. So it's not light and fluffy, even though it's very easy to read. It's very readable. So anyway, so she has one about the women of Easter and then one about the women of Christmas. So, and then final category. This is just straight up espresso. And even I don't go for that too often, but every now and then, I like to drink a straight shot of espresso, especially if it is really good and good at beans, well roasted. Yeah, it can be very good. So these ones are just more depth, not just like fluffy reads. And the first one is Handel's Messiah, Comfort for God's People. And sorry, I don't have the name of the author. And this one I have on my Kindle. And it is all about Handel's Messiah, the oratorio, which most people are familiar with. Hallelujah, hallelujah. And then the songs from the Christmas section, like, For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, unto us, etc. Anyway, this one goes through the background of Handel writing it and where the libretto came from, which is all the text, the lyrics, the process of how it came to be, why Handel wrote it, and more importantly, I forget his name, but the librettist, the gentleman who wrote the words, well, I mean, more like edited because they're all straight from the Bible, but he collected them all and organized them. And then Handel put the music to them. His reasons for writing it at that time, it was really good, very interesting. And I can just tell you very quickly, the book goes into a lot more detail about it. He was dismayed by the increasing philosophies of the Enlightenment and how they were reducing God to a far-off being who just kind of set the world in motion and was not intimately involved in the daily affairs of man. And that deist perspective kind of loses some of the sovereignty of God and his divinity, etc. So he wanted to combat that culturally. And he had assisted with writing oratorios before. I believe he had written librettos before and had worked with Handel, I think, before also. And so he, that's why he wrote this one, the put together the lyrics for Handel's Messiah. And then in the book, the author goes through, he goes through and analyzes the music, and how Handel wrote the music to really illustrate the meaning of the text that had been chosen. And I guess there's probably parts of it where the music talk might get a little bit esoteric for some people, but I have used it as a basis for lectures for like middle schoolers and high schoolers. And I think it's pretty approachable for most people, especially if you have an interest in music and musical things. If you know zero about music, it might go over your head. But anybody who's had basic music instruction or has sung in choir or whatever should be able to understand and track with everything he's saying. It's not that deep really, but it's fascinating how Handel used musical elements to really illustrate the truth of the scriptures that were chosen. So very well done. Interesting book. And then another one we have, which I actually own a copy, but I've lent it out at the moment, and that is called A Lineage of Grace by Francine Rivers. And I mention it because it's long. I mean, it's a big book. It's really actually, I think, 5 books in one, like 5 novellas in one. So there's a lot to it. But it goes through the women who are mentioned in the lineage of Jesus Christ in one of the Gospels. I can't remember if it's Matthew or Mark. But anyways, one of them, or Luke, has the genealogy and includes, I believe, 5 women's names. And so it goes through their stories and why they are included in this lineage of grace, as she calls it. And really great book. I read it. Well, I read them, I think, each individually, separately, some years ago at Christmas time. And I particularly remember enjoying the one about Mary. I found that one to be very good. So the last one, last but certainly not least, is a book of sermons by Charles Spurgeon. Now, I have not actually read the book. I don't have a copy of the book, and I've not actually read the book of sermons, but I have read some of his Christmas sermons and found them very interesting. I would have loved to have heard him preach at some point, because it seems like he was just very personable and very, like, I don't know, it seemed like he was a great preacher. And anyway, he preached Christmas sermons every year at Christmas time. And so they have been collected. So one collection is 12 Christmas sermons by Charles Spurgeon. So definitely worth reading for some devotional thoughts, a little bit deeper look at the spiritual aspect of Christmas. And so I think that is a very good note to end on. And so there you have it. My books are like coffee Christmas edition. What are some books that you would recommend for each of these categories, or one of them? Have you read any of these? Do you agree with my categorization of them? Just curious to know what you're thinking. Let me know in the comments. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will see you next time.